Brace yourself.
When you're looking at a game like My Friend Pedro, it's easy to focus on its chaotic side. It burst onto the scene as an indie warrior, a game striving to emulate the most over-the-top of action media, but putting that in the player's hands. It's a riotous experience, an adrenaline rush that takes score attack arcade games to an entirely new level. My Friend Pedro is a wild ride, yes, but beyond its trippy bullet time and crazy story is a game that feels condensed. A structure that is so ripe for iteration and expansion. It's been so long since I could say a game truly made me torn to see its ending, but I can't argue against that in this case. My Friend Pedro, from top to bottom, is a game with limitless chaotic potential that demands to be realized. Whether or not My Friend Pedro makes any sense contextually is a moot point. Talking floating bananas, cosplaying enemies talking in online chat speak, the final world being the internet, packaged predictably with a series of tubes line. I could go on and on. When it all comes together, My Friend Pedro doesn't give a damn about having a lick of coherence, and really, that's okay. The tonal design of the levels doesn't suffer from this scatterbrained narrative, while its humorous vibe is always preserved and purposely made to keep you guessing. Everything is up in the air throughout My Friend Pedro's runtime, defying the laws of tradition at every turn. And I know what you're thinking. That is the point, right? Well, yeah, that is My Friend Pedro's mantra. Shamelessly and transparently, developer Dead Toast's bizarre experiment runs wild. There are many moments throughout the game where something totally crazy happens, but the developer understands that these set pieces can fit into the crazy context without much accommodation. A firefight taking place in complete freefall, a motorcycle chase to outrun and outgun a mad butcher. Even the game's intermission in some strange pastel-colored fever dream manages to feel like a natural fit for My Friend Pedro's cultivated aesthetic. It's totally wacky, but in Pedro's world, it's par for the course. I know some developers have tried to relax their sensibilities and make their games less serious, taking away players' limitations and letting them revel in the chaos. Those are fun times. Hell, this isn't the first time I've made a video about a game like that. But basking in chaos can only go so far without things just getting out of hand and losing their purpose. It's not easy to be wacky for wackiness' sake, but lo and behold, My Friend Pedro stands with a big grin on its face, giving the finger to any semblance of sanity that persists. It's such a confidently weird game, one that makes a place for itself. Haters be damned. But for all its senselessness, My Friend Pedro is grounded where it counts. It's score attack in its purest state, always pushing the player towards racking up points and retaining their combo. And while keeping your gun flow going and striving for those high ranks brings to mind the stylish action of games like Devil May Cry, My Friend Pedro is closely tied to its level design as well as the individual combat mechanics. It shares that type of connection to games like Mad World, a game whose level design was the source of its combo potential and incentive to mix things up. But I can't say that My Friend Pedro goes fully down that route either. The movement and shooting do contribute to how a player can progress and better their score, but the levels themselves offer enough unique layouts and gimmicks to make the structure feel integral as well. In a way, My Friend Pedro splits that difference, achieving an equilibrium between the utility of a player's moveset and the context of the level in which it's used. Because of this balance, My Friend Pedro is free to experiment in many ways. Whether with new weapons to use, items to change up how your attacks function, or something as elementary as how a crowd of enemies are organized throughout a level. It takes a simple, almost historical gameplay framework and manages to make it feel crazy and constantly empowering. And the true source of this empowerment, much like the game's tone, is not hidden whatsoever. In fact, it's just as shameless. It's all about those acrobatics, those superhuman acts of strength, speed, and skill. It's all about pulling off tricks and using abilities that no regular human could ever perform with the same level of precision. That's the design mutation that sets My Friend Pedro apart from other arcade score attack indie games similar to it, and why so many people are giving this game so much attention. Splitting your shots to attack two enemies at once, hanging upside down from a zipline while blasting thugs, smashing through a glass window for a dramatic entry, My Friend Pedro revels in these moments. Thanks to sensible controls and a brilliant sense of flow, Dead Toast make it so easy to pull off these stylish moves, all demonstrated via level design that complements them and sharpens them to a fine point. Remarkably, My Friend Pedro's skill floor is low, considering its demand for player growth, while always going forward with new and shocking set pieces. And that's the really amazing part about this game. My friend Pedro constantly asks, how can we make this gameplay even more off the wall? What can be done to go one step further? The dual pistol dodges, the bullet ricocheting frying pans, the corpse head punting, it's all broadened and recontextualized to hide a truly fundamental approach to arcade-style video games. And those fundamentals, the skeleton of the core gameplay, are all about boosting your score and keeping your combo alive. While looking at its most singular components, My Friend Pedro really doesn't need these over-the-top abilities to be a functional or even a great game. Score attack has always been a sound design philosophy, infectiously hooking the player into getting faster and getting better. But with such a crazy collection of techniques and tools, a high skill ceiling is the holy grail, and My Friend Pedro clutches it in its bloody fist. My Friend Pedro is demanding, one of the most demanding games I've ever played, but not necessarily demanding toward the player. Yes, grabbing those high grades and spots on the leaderboard isn't easy, but My Friend Pedro is demanding from a more conceptual nature. It's a glutton for nuance, always going one step further. Because of this, I was sad seeing My Friend Pedro end, because as I said, this is a game that has nothing holding it back when it comes to how its gameplay is displayed or how it operates. Its level construction, its arsenal of weapons, its constantly shifting collection of gimmicks, there's so much more that can be done with this. Adding new weapons changes a player's proposed pacing. Environmental gimmicks and power-ups can contribute to more interesting enemy layouts for crazier combos. This is a game drenched in potential, occupying a very rare space in indie games where the gameplay depth is omnipresent, second only to the game's incentive to push the player forward via that depth. So many ideas could complement My Friend Pedro's design, all because the game itself is so fundamentally sound, so building new scenes and ideas, no matter how wild, just feels natural. Not much needs to be done for a new idea to fit into this crazy cocktail of over-the-top action. Just like I was while playing it, My Friend Pedro begs for more. If you couldn't tell already, I like My Friend Pedro. Hell, I'd even say I love it. It's by far one of the most empowering and zany games I've played in 2019, and I have very little desire to set it aside. But at the same time, I'm torn. I want more of this game. There are so many ideas that the developer could implement, all without incongruent design or stagnant set pieces, and it could fit the tone easily too. My Friend Pedro stops making sense from the second its campaign begins, so there isn't any kind of accommodation needed to make things fit into its nutty world. This is all a strange feeling for me because I enjoyed practically every moment of its campaign, and, despite its minor missteps, I was grinning ear to ear. But this is a special game, one whose foundational design is so open to more. More levels, more set pieces, more wackiness, it could all fit so nicely. So, bring on more, Dead Toast. Please? Please?